Now, we all might have been wrong about the S23 Ultra because even though it is an iterative upgrade from the S22 Ultra, it does have a lot of surprising features. This is the Galaxy S23 Ultra, which we just got it from Samsung, and it's time to unbox it. So as usual, this is the tin Samsung packaging that we've been seeing for many years already, so we're just going to tear open the sticker right on the top here. So this is the lavender color version, which I actually like this lavender color a lot since the Galaxy Z Flip 3, and I'm glad that the S23 Ultra actually has this color. So let's take out the sticker and we're going to take it out. Ooh, wow, look at this packaging. This is a brand new kind of packaging. The phone is finally like hidden behind this black color packaging here, so it's not just like the phone on top, so that you don't drop the phone accidentally when you first unbox it. But let's take it out of here, and this is the Galaxy S23 Ultra. There's no charging brick inside as usual, but you do get a charging cable in another separate small box that's inside the packaging here, as well as some paperwork and the SIM ejector right here. Here's the cable, user manuals, and the SIM pin. Right, let's rip off this black color screen protector. So there's no factory pre-applied screen protector on the S23 Ultra, just like Samsung's other S or A series phone, aside from the Galaxy Z series, because they have to apply a screen protector down onto those flat screens in order to prevent it being scratched and so on, because those are really, really fragile. So on first impressions, the Galaxy S23 Ultra feels a little heftier and wider than the S22 Ultra, and that's because Samsung says that it has kind of flattened the screen a bit. It's not so curvy anymore, so that you get some extra screen estate, and also you kind of feel it easier to navigate around with that less curvature, right? So let's power up the phone. So we've got the S23 Ultra all set up and ready to go. So let's do a recap on the specs right here. So the S23 Ultra is powered by a Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 SoC for Galaxy, and what that means is that this is a custom chipset that is developed by Qualcomm and Samsung together to make this a faster Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 chip than the rest. So we are going to do a benchmark test on another Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 chip powered phone to see how different the results really are. Now, it has 12 gigabytes of RAM, and my unit comes with 256 gigabytes of storage. Now, that is the base storage model, and we're going to check out the initial storage right here, because we've basically just installed some simple apps right here already. So we're going to find out how much storage does Samsung use up on its phones. So according to the storage page on my S23 Ultra here, the system storage utilization is just about 40.68 gigabytes. That's actually pretty decent for any flagship Android phones out there, especially when Samsung has preloaded so many software onto the device that you can't actually remove. So it's not as bad as some people has claimed that uses 60 gigabytes. I'm not seeing that here right now, and I do hope that this storage doesn't increase over time, because 256 gigabytes of storage is kind of little if you want to take a lot of photos and videos on your phone in the long term. So yeah, this is actually a good sign to see when you first start up the phone. So you get about 215 gigabytes of available user storage for you to install apps and load up media files. So I just ran Geekbench and 3D Mark on the S23 Ultra, as well as compared it with two other devices right here, and it is the iQOO 11, which is another Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 powered device, as well as the iPhone 14 Pro, and the results are really interesting. Now let's talk about the S23 Ultra and the iQOO 11, and this is the score. Look at the difference there. So the S23 Ultra single core score is actually 90 points more than the iQOO 11, whereas the multi-core score gets about 150 points extra. Now that is actually a difference right here, even though the scores doesn't mean anything. And if we switch over to 3D Mark, we are going to see an even bigger difference here, because the GPU on the S23 Ultra reigns more superior than the iQOO 11. Look at the score difference. The S23 Ultra scored 3,809 points with an average frame rate of 22.8 FPS, whereas the iQOO 11 scored 2,532 points with an average frame rate of 15.2 FPS. That's 7 FPS of difference, and it is actually a big deal if you're running games on the S23 Ultra, especially games like Genshin Impact. You're definitely going to experience way more smoother frame rates. Now, how about the iPhone 14 Pro? Well, when it comes to CPU performance, the iPhone 14 Pro's A16 Bionic chip still reigns superior over the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 chip. As you can see the results here, it is actually a huge difference, probably about 20% difference right here, and that is something that we already expect out of the A16 Bionic chip. However, when it comes to graphics, this is where it surprised me. The S23 Ultra actually scored higher than the iPhone 14 Pro because the iPhone 14 Pro only got 3,373 points with an average frame rate of 20.2 FPS, whereas even though the S23 Ultra got a lot higher score, but it's just another 2.8 FPS, which isn't quite a lot of difference, but still, it is still surprising that for the first time ever, an Android flagship chipset has managed to outperform an iPhone's GPU score. So that is actually a really interesting benchmark that we just did right here. Now, while I was doing benchmarks on the S23 Ultra, I do realize that the back doesn't heat up quite as bad as it is on the S22 Ultra. The top part gets a little warm, but it's not like terribly warm that would scald your hand or whatsoever, and that's because Samsung says that it has increased the cooling area up to 2.7 times. I'm not sure what it really is, but I'm assuming that's actually the heatsink that the company has fitted onto the S23 Ultra to make it dissipate heat faster. So that is actually a good thing to know if you are going to use the S23 Ultra for gaming. Now that you have seen the performance improvements on the S23 Ultra, it's time to talk about the next big improvement on this phone, and that is its camera system. Now, as you guys may already know, the main camera has been upgraded from an 108 megapixel camera to a 200 megapixel camera. Now, that is a big jump when it comes to resolution, but to be honest, most people are not going to shoot in that resolution, but that's just part of the story because the Galaxy S23 Ultra still basically shoots stills at a pixel bin 12 megapixel resolution. So what Samsung has did right here is to use its tetra pixel binning technology by binning 8 pixels into like another 4 subpixels and to make it into a 12 megapixel photo. So that means you are going to get a lot more detail when it comes to low light and so on. And Samsung has been talking about low light for a while on its phones already. So yep, we are going to see quite a bit of improvement on the S23 Ultra, which we are going to find out in the final review. But as for now, we're just going to jump into the camera app and check out some of the features, and of course we are going to do some studio shot comparisons and some quick comparisons with some other phones that we have right here. So this is the S23 Ultra's camera app. So you get the usual portrait, photo, and video shooting modes right out of the box when you first launch it. But what we are more interested is in the More tab here. So we are getting this new mode called the Expert RAW mode, which will allow us to do things such as astrophotography as teased by Samsung in their keynote. So this is definitely something that's really interesting here. So I'm just going to tap on the astrophotography mode right on the top here, which looks like a star here. So it has this astrophoto mode, and we can even show like sky guide. I'm just going to turn it on and allow permissions, and I'm just going to see if I can detect something right here, because this is something that's really interesting on the S23 Ultra, and it seems like we are not able to show anything. I'm just going to show it. All right, so finally we are seeing Uranus, Mars. Okay, so I'm even seeing Perseus, even though I'm right in the studio here, but if you happen to point it up to the sky, you should be able to see all these stars on top. So we are seeing Pegasus, Neptune, Venus, Jupiter, Pisces. Whoa, this is definitely way more interesting than some other camera apps that I have used out there. I really can't wait to use this camera to take some nice astrophotography shots. If the Malaysian weather is nice enough for me because it's been raining a lot recently, so we can't really get clear skies right here, okay? So yeah, let's turn off the astro photo mode right now. So we have some of the features right here, and this is the metering mode, and we can switch between resolutions of 12 megapixels and 50 megapixels. Now, unfortunately, there is no way that you can switch to 200 megapixels right here in the expert raw mode. I'm not sure why, but what I can assume right here that this camera module right here isn't necessarily a 200 megapixel lens, even though the hardware says it really is, but still I'm just surprised that I can't switch to 200 megapixels on the expert raw mode. It's probably Samsung hasn't enabled that on the phone software, but I'm sure this is something that can be easily unlocked by software, but Samsung just didn't do it. Now, aside from that, this expert raw mode also gives you the regular camera setting style, so you can adjust the shutter speed right here, ISO, exposure value, focus, where do you want to focus, do you want it to be on the center or so on. Yep, you can actually do that, and you can do white balance right here. That's pretty much on the expert raw mode, and it's probably something that we are really going to focus on in the camera review. So I just took 3 photos on the Galaxy S23 Ultra and the Vivo X90 Pro. Now, the X90 Pro is the strongest contender to the Galaxy S23 Ultra, and that's because of its main sensor. It is a 50.3 megapixel Sony IMX989 1-inch sensor that we have seen perform wonders when it comes to photography. So it is going to be interesting to see how it compares to the S23 Ultra. So let's talk about this first photo that we have here. Now, this is the MSI Lucky Dragon that I just took in the studio here, and I purposely took this picture against backlighting because we want to see how this phone's fare. Now, as you can see, the Vivo X90 Pro really nails out the highlights and the dynamic range so well that even when there's backlighting on the back, you can still see the details of Lucky the Dragon right here despite this bad lighting condition. Now, this is something that we always want to see on phone cameras out there, and apparently the S23 Ultra's camera is still not quite optimized for that yet. And speaking of the second picture here, it is just a normal microfiber cloth that we took, and this is where I think the S23 Ultra looks better when it comes to details and so on. And as you can see, the Vivo X90 Pro loses some focus on the top and the side here, and that's probably because of the larger f1.75 aperture that we got out there. But that's also something that Samsung has really done well here when it comes to image optimization, because they are really good at that for their cameras. And in terms of colors, I kind of find that the S23 Ultra really produces better colors here, and surprisingly, if you compare this to the 1-inch sensor on the X90 Pro, the microfiber cloth tends to show a lot more detail on the S23 Ultra. So I would assume that is some AI image optimization that's going on the S23 Ultra. And when it comes to the final picture right here, now these two photos look really good. This is a regular daytime photo that anyone will just take, and it will look good pretty much on any phone right here. But if you look at the dynamic range on these two phones and the colors, I have to say that I kind of prefer the colors of the S23 Ultra a little better than the Vivo X90 Pro here. I did not have the Zeiss natural color profile turned on right here, so all the color optimizations are all turned on by default. And I kind of prefer the colors on the S23 Ultra because I feel that they are actually a lot more natural and kind of more real life as compared to the actual scene right there. But when it comes to detail, if you zoom in to the rocks on the drain right there, you can definitely see that the Vivo X90 Pro's 1-inch main sensor really meant business here. As you can see, the details are so refined and way better than it is on the Galaxy S23 Ultra's camera. So yeah, this is just a first impression of the S23 Ultra's camera, so don't judge it just yet because there's going to be software updates and all that to improve the camera system performance, and we will be doing a few comparisons with other phones as we work through the full review. Now let's take a selfie on the S23 Ultra's front camera. Right, let's start off with the normal wide angle lens and switch to wide angle. Right, zooms out a little bit only. Okay, let's take a look at the pictures now. Now, even though this is just a 12 megapixel resolution camera, I have to say that the details are actually really good, and it doesn't lose out to the 40 megapixel lens that is back on the S22 Ultra. Now, Samsung says that they have increased the sensor size on the 12 megapixel front camera here, so we are going to expect better details when it comes to low light selfies and all that, which we will have to find out when we take this phone out to the field and test out the front-facing camera. And finally, I'm curious to find out if Samsung has improved its charging speed here, because back on the S22 Ultra, even though we have 45 watts of fast charging, it doesn't charge as fast as it should be. So we have 52% of battery on the S23 Ultra now, and I'm just going to plug in my USB PD charger. This is the Xender Super Tank Pro, which will have a power meter right on the front to tell us the wattage. So we're just going to plug in right now with the phone screen turned on. Right, it has started charging already, so we are already going up to 18 watts, 22.4 watts, 27, 32. Wow, that is definitely an improvement. And look at it, I'm still having the phone screen turned on as of now, and I'm still using it, and the wattage doesn't drop as drastically as it is on the S22 Ultra, because back on the S22 Ultra, I would only get about 15 watts of charging power if I have the screen turned on. Now, that is definitely an improvement that Samsung has done right here. It is still going at 30.8 watts as showing on my power bank right here. And if I turn off the screen, it should go up again. So yeah, it's there. It's just 30 watts, but then yeah, it should definitely still go up a little if the phone screen is off, because it actually uses less power. So I'm really glad that Samsung has done this improvement to the wired charging. And I think this is definitely going to be my phone to switch for this year. So even though the Galaxy S23 Ultra is a mere iterative upgrade over the S22 Ultra, the under-the-hood upgrades of this phone is really great. As you can see, the performance improvements, the improved charging speed, and the camera performance. It's definitely something to look at if you are interested in getting the S23 Ultra. As for S22 Ultra users, I have to say that there's really no need to jump onto the bandwagon just yet, not unless you really appreciate some of the improvements that Samsung has done on the S23 Ultra. The S22 Ultra as of now is still a really great phone, and if you can get it like on a secondhand store or refurbished, I would definitely still recommend that you go get one. But as of now, the S23 Ultra is probably my favorite phone of 2023. So yep, we'll be doing a long-term review on the S23 Ultra, because there's bound to be software updates and a lot of improvements coming to the phone. So we'll be doing those updates on our channel, and as soon as it becomes available. So definitely stay tuned to the channel, subscribe to us, and make sure to share this video to anyone who's interested in getting the S23 Ultra, because I have to say that the improvements that Samsung has done here is downright impressive. Alright, so thanks for watching this video. Stay tuned to our channel for more videos coming right up, and I'll see you guys in the next one.